I'd just like to say welcome, and my name is Neil Saphir. I'm the director and librarian of the John Carter Brown Library. We're here on Thursday, October 8th, on a beautiful autumn day on the main green of Brown University at the main entrance of the library as well. And we're really excited to be able to take you inside the library in this virtual moment that we are in, and to share with you some of our activities through the prism of the acquisitions that we have been making very, very recently. Indeed, some of the books that we'll be talking about just came into the library in the last few days. So we are here right now in the main reading room of the library, the Macmillan Reading Room. On this side of the library, you see what we have a kind of a public engagement space where we have exhibition cases and certain parts of our collection. And over here, we have a space dedicated to researchers, and the researchers obviously are limited right now due to COVID, but we are on a very limited basis providing access to the library and its collection. And so I'll give you a little bit of a sense of how you can do that in just a little bit. But first, I wanted to give you a sense of the history of this institution. The John Carter Brown Library began as John Carter Brown's private library. And John Carter Brown is the bust you see ahead of, in front of you. And the image above that is John Nicholas Brown, his son, who bequeathed his father's library and the entire collection to the care of Brown University upon his death in 1900. So these are two fundamental individuals for our collection. Now, John Carter Brown was the descendant of the commercial and maritime family from here in Rhode Island, and they made their money in all kinds of 18th century commerce, from the China trade to the slave trade. And the John Carter Brown decided approximately at the age of 50 that he wanted to dedicate himself to collecting materials related to the history of the Americas, all of the Americas from Greenland to Patagonia. And this is precisely what he did. In fact, I'll show you what we consider to be the birth certificate of this collection, which is a list of about 750 items that John Carter Brown ordered from a book dealer in London in 1846. But before I do that, I wanted to give you a little bit of a sense of what the collection contains. For instance, here in the reading room, we have what's only part of the collection. But it starts really at the end of the 15th century when individuals started writing about the explorations that many European nations were embarked upon, and really began to increase over the course of the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries as European empires imposed their settlements and colonization practices on what was then called a new world. Of course, it was not a new world to those individuals who were already living within it. However, from that perspective, we've always sought at the library to collect materials related to all of the Americas, from their indigenous populations to the African populations in the Americas, as well as the European countries that engaged in imperial activities. And I just wanted to show you here, because we'll be talking about them in just a moment, part of our Luso-Brazilian collection. This is a collection that is one of the top collections of its kind in the world, that stretches from approximately 1500 to the 1830s. You can see some parts of it here in the main reading room. But what is especially extraordinary about this collection, and you'll see some examples of this, is that across the way over here, we also have one of the finest Dutch Americana collections anywhere in the world. Of course, the Dutch were active as colonizers and commercial traders all over the globe, including in New Amsterdam, in this continent. But they also were active in South America. And in fact, one of the episodes that we'll be talking about in just a moment is an episode where the Dutch invaded the northeast of Brazil, then a Portuguese colony, and essentially engaged in a war with the Portuguese for the last, approximately 30 years. And so it is really this connection, multilingual, multi-geographic, and multi-contextual that serves as the kind of stuff of connecting the different parts of individual scholars with the materials from the collection. So now I'm going to go inside another room here, which is called the Harold Brown Room. This is a room that harkens back to the earliest origins of the library and its collection. In fact, here you even have the table on which John Carter Brown consulted all of the new materials that came into the library. He didn't have a Yeti microphone, however. That is a 21st century invention. But this is the document that I referred to just before. This is the invoice of books shipped by Henry Stevens on the 3rd of February, 1846. And if you can see here, the very, very first books that came into the collection were a set of 4 letters that were printed in Europe in 1493 and 1494 or they were reprinting the letter of Christopher Columbus and his arrival in what he thought was Asia, but we now know was the Caribbean. And you can see that if John Carter Brown had stopped only with this particular collection, here you have Champlain's Voyage to New France, it still would have been one of the most extraordinary collections of its kind in the world. But he kept acquiring books and made two other spectacular purchases over the course of that year. When he died in 1874, his son John Nicholas Brown was far too young to take over at the time, but his widow, Sophia Augusta Brown, seamlessly continued his collection and then eventually would pass it on to her son, John Nicholas Brown. So that gives you a little bit of a sense of the trajectory. As I've said, the entire collection came to the building that we're now in 1904, when this building was inaugurated and the keys were given to then Brown President Francis Wayland. And we have been continuing with the mission of the institution, which is to collect in all of these different areas, literally for the past 110 years. Now, the way we're going to do this is I'm going to spend really no more than about 5 minutes talking about a few items that have recently come into the collection. I'm then going to turn things over to my colleagues, Domingo Ledesma, Acting Curator of European Books, and Jose Montelongo, Maury Abramson, Curator of Latin American Books, who will present some of the materials that they have selected for the collection, and then we'll turn it over for questions, because we really want to make this also an opportunity for those of you who have questions about the processes of the library to be able to ask. So the materials that I have selected here are related primarily to Dutch Brazil. But I want to just start with one item that we recently acquired, which is a description of Guinea and part of Africa that was printed in Lisbon in 1633. I'm sorry, 1633. I'm sorry, again, 1733. And this, this forms part of a new initiative that we have, which is to collect materials related to Africans in the Americas, and by extension to Africa itself. primarily this book is about Africa and the Portuguese engagement with Africa. But there are some references to the Americas. And in particular, I wanted to point our attention to here at the end, where they talk about the different kinds of agricultural products that exist in Africa. And it says essentially that there are certain products in Africa that are not present in Brazil. And as a result, what this tells us about the Portuguese is that their interest in the costumes and the arms and the warlike activities of different populations in Africa were always tied to their interests in empire. And so their relations with Africans and Africans descended people were always viewed through that prism as well. We will be sharing more about this collection in the coming weeks and months, but this is just one example of that. The other example that I wanted to mention, which also comes from the Portuguese world, is this item, the Razão da Guerra entre Portugal e as Províncias Unidas dos Países Baixos. This is a very brief text that was produced by a Portuguese statesman, Antonio de Sousa de Macedo. And it just, we were very excited to see it. It talks a lot about both Brazil and Angola, precisely because in the Portuguese world of the mid and early 17th century, Angola and Brazil were very closely connected precisely because of the slave trade and of commercial and other interests. So this is a fascinating text, but what's particularly exciting about it for us is that the library already owned the Dutch version over here, which was produced by Enriquez Ondias in 1659, and the Spanish version, which was produced purportedly in approximately 1658. In fact, you can see that the title pages, Razón de la Guerra entre Portugal y las Provincias Unidas de los Países Bajos, and the Portuguese version are very, very similar. I wanted to bring these three texts to your attention, precisely because this is an institution that thrives on comparing different editions in different languages at different times. And so, and then thus demonstrating the interconnections between them. Finally, I wanted to, as I mentioned, Enriquez Ondias was the Dutch printer that produced the text in Portuguese, and Ondias was also a cartographer. And we have a text here. We have a tremendous map collection. Unfortunately, our curator of maps and prints is not feeling well today, so she couldn't join us, but she is an outstanding resource for maps, as well as material related to the Caribbean, to the slave trade, and to the history of food, which is another thriving area of scholarship and collecting here at the library. This book, not by Ondias, but this was a text that Ondias was involved in. The states, empires, and royal possessions and principalities of the world. This essentially is an ethnography of the world that contains information about all the different parts of the world. But of course, we are interested primarily in the history of the Americas. So I've opened this to the state of the New World and New Spain, and you can see all of the different areas here that are described in this text. But what I thought was really great, and what I wanted to show you in particular, is this map. This is a very typical mid-17th century ethnographic map, where it shows the geography of the region, but also each individual ethnic group, from Greenland to Virginia to Florida, Hope These People Vote, and to New Albion or New England. And so it really provides this kind of unified view from the European perspective, without question, of the different individuals that purportedly lived in these areas that the Dutch, the French, the Spanish, and the Portuguese were involved in. It also here has city views, which is very interesting because one of the areas that we're quite interested in is the collection of views of cities. That's an active area of collection. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to connect on the other computer because you probably see me in double image. And I will turn things over to my colleagues, starting with Domingo Ledesma, who will present the selections that he has for us today. One moment, please. Okay. I hope everybody can hear me yet again, and I'll turn things over to Domingo. Go ahead, Domingo.
Hello, everyone. My name is Domingo Ledesma, and I'm serving as curator of European books. And I'm going to continue what Niels has been talking about, so our recent acquisitions. So the first one is a hagiography of Santa Rosa de Lima. And as Neil mentioned, we have several editions of different books in different languages, and the collection of hagiography of Santa Rosa is very huge at the library. And in this case, as you see in your screen, you're seeing two editions that looks very similar. And in fact, they were both printed in Augsburg in 1671, and the one that is at your right is it has is the one that the JCB owns, and the one that is at your left is the one that we just acquired. And then you would ask why you are acquiring a book that is just so similar. Well, in fact, they are not similar. They have the same the same title page and preliminary materials, but the one that we just acquired, it is one that is part of a very small number of copies that contains a suite of 8 plates. And this in particular that you are seeing here is depicting Santa Rosa surrounded by Amerindians, by people from the Americas. The next book that I would like to mention is Viaje de América Roma by Frau José de Castro. And this is another very rare first edition of this book. It's presumably printed in Madrid in the press of Juan García Infanzón. The JCB has a similar edition of this book that was printed in Mexico in 1745. That was actually a second reprint. The book is a poetic narration of a voyage from America to Rome, and it's a verse narrative of octosyllabic lines. And Castro was a Franciscan born in Zacatecas, Mexico, around 1648. In 1687, he was commissioned to represent in Rome the province of Zacatecas in the general chapter of the Franciscan order. So this book was written during his journey and printed with the aim of disseminating the experience of his voyage. He managed to print the book while he was in Madrid, and that's why you see that the book doesn't have any official license, and it doesn't have any information about the printed. This is actually the very rare first edition of the book, and then it was the JCB is acquiring this one in order to make it to compare what we have in the realm of this type of verse books. But the actual book that I'm really excited to talk about is a more recent book, 18th century. Is about how to make bread using the flour of potatoes. And you will ask why I'm so interested in this book. And because Antoine Augustin Parmentier is someone that we should think about every time that we eat bread, because he was one that investigate all the ways that we can produce this anything related with flour. So he compared flours made of corn and also with potato. And the potato, as you may know, has been introduced from South America and Europe at the beginning of 16th century. But except in Spain and Ireland, potato was not popular in the rest of Europe, where it was used to feed animals and occasionally to feed war prisoners. Parmentier was a French agriculturalist and apothecary who did more to popularize the potato in Europe than any other individual in its history. As a prisoner of war in Germany in mid-18th century, Parmentier realized the nutritional value of potatoes, as they were basically the only food he was given. So then after he returned to France in 1763, Parmentier had to work hard to promote the potato in the face of opposition from scientists who said it caused leprosy. The clerics that they said that it provoked lust, and the gourmets that say that potato was tasteless, indelicate, and flatulent. In fact, in France, potato was disregarded as a low quality produce to the point that in 1748, the parliament forbade the cultivation of potato. Thanks to Parmentier, the potato was declared edible in 1772, and then Parmentier was appointed to teach at the Free School of Bakery in order to stabilize the food supplied. And so Parmentier's name can be found in many culinary books to label potato recipes, from soups to, not surprising, pommes frites, or as are known here in the US, French fries. So every time that you eat French fries, think about Parmentier. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Domingo. That was an outstanding presentation, and gives a really great sense of some of the breadth of the collection from the Americas to Europe. We'll now turn to Jose Montelongo, our curator of Latin American books, who has a couple of choice items to present to us. Take it away, Jose.
I think Jose might be mute.
I'm sorry. Now I am on mute. Thank you, Pedro. Thank you, Neil, and thank you, Domingo. Really nice to see this great turnout this afternoon. And what I want to tell you very briefly is that people who work in the library, like Neil, like Domingo, like myself, and people who visit the library, we all have certain favorites. It's a collection with hundreds and hundreds of bibliographic gems, but we all have a weakness for this or that particular title or group of titles. And in my case, it is a book printed in Rome, written by Alonso de Ovalle, a Jesuit. It was printed in Italian and in Spanish with the purpose of letting people in all over Europe know about that farthest corner of the Spanish Empire, Chile. These books are already in the library with a fantastic and very, very unique map of Chile, and also with beautiful, I'm trying to go to my next slide if I can. Sorry for the little next. Yeah, next slide, good. Beautiful Renaissance style of illustrations. And the way that Ovalle talks about the Andes, the nature of Chile, it's really a precursor 300 years before of Pablo Neruda's Canto General de Chile, that would then be subsumed in the Canto General, this poem to the Americas, kind of like our collection from north to Tierra del Fuego, from the very north to Tierra del Fuego. Well, you can imagine my surprise when a trusted vendor of ours tells me that he has a letter printed 2 years after Ovalle's book, talking about a terrible earthquake. This is the most dramatic thing, let's say, that I myself acquired this year for the JCB, because it starts saying that tears would be more appropriate than ink to describe the tragedy that has befallen to this our fatherland, in which more than 1,000 people perished. The author, González Chaparro, is another Jesuit, and he's writing to Ovalle. González Chaparro says, "Not everybody was asleep when the earthquake struck in Santiago. It was 10:30 at night of May 13, 1647. And the earthquake lasted less than the time needed to recite 4 creeds. Such was the force of this cataclysm that it destroyed the foundations of sumptuous edifices, leaving them unfit for rebuilding." Ovalle's book has plenty of illustrations, of architectural illustrations of convents and monasteries, and of the city of Santiago. So what this book vendor told me was, I asked him to put it aside, and he said, "I'll show it to you at the New York Antiquarian Book Fair," which Bertie, Domingo, Neil, and myself attended in March of this year, exactly 1 week before everything closed down. I mean, New York City was open and the JCB was open, but 1 year after, he showed us that letter, and we basically, well, we acquired that letter in New York. The whole world, at least our world, closed down. I read in a biography of Ovalle that he was very likely in Madrid with copies of his beautiful Histórica Relación del Reino de Chile, showing it to people when he received the letter of González Chaparro telling him that the city was destroyed. I want to tell you about another very recent acquisition, Relación del Ejemplar Castigo que envió Dios. It's a report on another earthquake, this time in Lima in the year 1687. And Domingo pointed out this letter to me, saying, "Jose, we have the version printed in Mexico City from the year after, but this is the original, printed in Lima about that earthquake. And we started talking, Domingo and myself, about the popularity of this type of document. I went to Josiah, our catalog, our public catalog, and limited my search to the JCB, and then wrote earthquakes as a subject heading. And there it was, 186 items at the JCB only about earthquakes. A handful of them contemporary books about natural disasters in Latin America, but a lot of them reports like this one, letters like this one. Domingo told me, part of the popularity was probably that part of these letters and imprints that talks about that says repent. This is God sending us a message. And I said, yes, Domingo, and probably another part of it was, that part of human imagination that is captured by the apocalyptic sense of our world coming to an end. So I thought 2020 would be a good time to tell you guys about this type of disasters. As I told you, I limited my search to only earthquakes at the JCB, not counting other, not counting pandemics, not counting volcanic eruptions. Lastly, let me tell you one more thing. In that book I read about Ovalle, it said that instead of being able to ask for resources for more Jesuit monasteries and missions in Chile, which was his original goal, he most likely turned to asking for tax breaks, for the crown not to receive the money that he used to receive from that from the Capitanía General de Chile, but to stop taxes so that they could start the rebuild. That was at least one other of the reasons for this type of document to be printed. That is it. That's it for me. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, everybody.
Great, thank you, Jose. That was a fantastic presentation as well. And really, I want to emphasize these are just a few of the ways that entry points to the collection. We have time now for some questions, really, that can range anything from the collection and accessing it during these pandemic times to specific questions regarding aspects of the collection. While people are gathering their thoughts, I did want to mention one very adorable new acquisition that we have just acquired recently that Bertie Mandelblatt was going to present, which is this Jeu de cartes géographiques. It is a game of geographic playing cards. And Bertie writes that the JCB purchased this charming set of French geographical playing cards that were produced in Lille in 1806, and that the educational game joins the JCB's growing collection of pedagogical instruments for geographical education, including numerous juvenilia and 2 other sets of geographical playing cards, both in English and published slightly earlier. This particular set is unique because it is complete. It includes the original cardboard case, as you can see here, 48 playing cards, each bearing text and an engraving, a folded world map, and a folded sheet explaining the rules of the game. If we could mass produce it and send it to you for these times of pandemic that we're in, we would, believe me. 10 of the cards are devoted to the Americas, not including the Caribbean islands, which belong to the set of 3 Oceania cards. And curiously, although this is Bertie, although the set is dated 1806, the capital of the United States on the world map is indicated to be Philadelphia. As she says, learning about geography clearly was and is in a process of constant evolution. So I'll just pull out a couple of these cards and show them to you, as you can see. they're really quite extraordinary. And as Bertie said, they give us a sense that, that geography and notions about what people thought of different parts of the world was constantly changing. And these kinds of pedagogical games were always adjusting things as well. So anyway, just wanted to share that with you. And I will say, one of the questions relates to whether or not we have materials related to the Portuguese and Dutch colonization in Asia. The short answer is that's not a collecting focus of the JCB, but the longer answer is absolutely we do, because any of the materials that talked about Dutch colonization in the world and Portuguese colonization in the world as a whole would include the Americas as well as Asia, Africa, and other parts of the globe. So indeed, the first 50 years of what we have in the Portuguese collection relates more to Asia than it does even to the Americas, because the discovery of Brazil by the Portuguese was really an afterthought as they were moving toward a much more vigorous and engaged connection with Asia. There are scholars here at Brown, Evelyn Hudahart especially, who is a professor in history department and affiliated with ethnic studies, has a whole project on Asia and the connections with the Americas. And we've had quite a number of fellows who have also explored that. Any other questions about the acquisitions process or anything that that you'd like to have further elaborated on by Jose, Domingo, or anybody else? Okay, well, if we don't have any other comments, we're also making a great effort in this moment of, we have one last question, but we're making an effort in this moment of over Zooming to limit our presentations to between 30 and 45 minutes. So this is actually perfect timing. But David Fernandez asked us if we have acquired any manuscripts recently. And I will say that we definitely have. One of those manuscripts is actually a French a navigational treatise that was purchased just about 6 months ago and is going to be present in a forthcoming exhibition, digital exhibition, that will open at the end of this month, called Constellations. And it's all about visions of the skies and the earth throughout the Americas. It's curated by two guest curators, Nidia Pineda and Tomas Adagi. And it is a spectacular manuscript with wonderful kind of outlandish images of the moon and the sun, personifications of those individuals, which is really interesting in a navigational treatise. As a general rule, we do not digitize manuscripts because we want those to be discovered by our researchers when they come to the library. But we're rethinking those policies as well during the time of COVID. I didn't mention that we have an extremely ambitious and open digitization program. We have a phenomenal digitization staff, and we're working very hard to make sure that we get materials out to the community, not only just making them available, but really pushing them out in a kind of a conscious way. Jose Montelongo, our curator of Latin American books, recently published a blog post that's available on our website about the questionnaire from the Relaciones Geográficas in central Mexico in the 16th century, which was not available in digital form anywhere. And so now we've digitized it. Jose has written a short description of it, and it is available for everybody to use. So we'll be pushing those things out over the course of the next couple of months. I see a question regarding graduate students. Unfortunately, we don't know who is a graduate student here and who is an undergrad and who is just an interested member of the public. But we are very interested in providing services, especially for students at this time. And so I put in the chat a link, jcblibrary.org/library, which has information on whom to contact to get more information. And any suggestions and recommendations, you can please send to us, send to me or to any of the curators. We'd be happy to respond. And really, it's so important and so helpful to us to have this communication back and forth in this time of social distancing and also forced separation from the physical collection. So with that, if there aren't any other questions, we'll call this a wrap. And thank you all. It's great to see individuals and friends, colleagues from France, from the Netherlands, from Louisiana, and elsewhere. Really wonderful to be with you, all of you, and look forward to seeing you again soon.